All right, good morning. Welcome in. Out of Bounds, ESPN 1059 The Zone. We're streaming live right now on thezone1059.com and the Out of Bounds radio app. The Out of Bounds radio app. You can listen anytime, anywhere. And thank you to the thousands and thousands of people who have downloaded the app over the years. The Out of Bounds radio app. You can stream the show anytime, anywhere. On your walk, working out, at the pool, inside your house. The Out of Bounds radio app. And also thanks to Pearl River Resort and Patron Tequila for sending us to Dallas, Texas for SEC Media Days. We had a blast, and they should have made it SEC Media Days powered by Nick Saban because he stole the show. None of the teams or players were even a small wave and a baby pool this week compared to Nick Saban doing TV. That's unbelievable because we got star power at the quarterback position this year, and you got Kirby Smart, Alabama, and so on, and yet it was the Nick Saban show. And, so I had some fun, but I'm glad to be back. We want to welcome in Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. All right, Steve, it looks like the Angels are having to spend some money on some of their top picks. David Mershon drafted in the 18th round. Mississippi State fans on pins and needles about whether or not they could get Mershon back. Call it right now. How do you see it? David Mershon back or he goes pro?
Well, if I had to call it, I'm not ready to call it, but if I had to call it, I think there is a decent chance that he comes back. And there's a few reasons that I say that. Number one, and I broke this down yesterday over on the message board at genespage.com, the Angels draft pool is right at $13 million. Well, Christian Moore, their very first pick, had a slot value of $6.5 million, and I'm told that he signed close to slot. So that's almost half their money allocated to one player. And you've got 20 other players to split, I don't know, $6.5 million. And then your number 2 and number 3 pick, their assigned slot values are right at $3 million. And so when you start working through that, there's not going to be a lot of money left to pay Dave Mershon. Their 11th round pick, Trey Gregory Anthony, I believe is his name, drafted in the 11th round, expected to sign for almost $2 million. So that eats up a lot of the money too. Now, Mershon may just be ready to begin his pro career. That's always something you never really know a young person's motivation until they get the deal. And I was told as of last night, Dave Mershon has not met with the Angels. He has not been presented a deal yet. And so there's still some data that's got to be kind of accumulated here before he makes a decision. And, listen, I think ideally he would have loved to have signed and been drafted maybe in the 5th or 6th round and have this situation resolved. What happens a lot, Bo, late in drafts, especially rounds like 17 through 20, teams kind of take a flyer on a guy. It's like, hey, let's go get a guy, because you can't skip a pick, right? You have to pick somebody. And a lot of times if teams know their draft pool is going to be, exhausted, they'll just take a guy, kind of the draft and follow a guy. And there's other guys out there, they take them and like if something else should happen, right? If a guy doesn't pass a physical, they can't come to terms, something crazy happens, well, then you've got bonus money available to pay to a really good player. And so I believe that's really the case with Dave Mershon. I don't think they're going to have a lot of money left to pay him. But we don't know yet, and there's some reports out there that, he's going to sign. And I can tell you, and I've got it confirmed every way possible, that at this point there is nothing more to know than that Dave Mershon is working through this process, gathering information, and will make a decision once he gets an idea of what his signing bonus would be.
So this could go on for a while, right?
Well, I'm told they're supposed to meet later this week. So I think maybe we'll have some clarity early next week. Dave is a very mature guy, comes from a great family, a family that values education, a family that loves one another, so it's going to be a family decision, but ultimately his. But he's just got to kind of work through this. They have until noon Central on August 1st to come to terms, the teams do. I think this thing with Marshawn wraps up well before then, because I think once he gets the deal and has a chance to maybe talk to his family and his advisors and talk to Kurt Simonis and some of Mississippi State's people, then he'll make a decision. But no matter what he's done, I mean, Dave Marshawn is an incredible ball player. He is the heart and soul of this team, and that's why people are so anxious about all this. But any reports right now, one way or the other, that he is going to sign or going to come back are just absolutely premature.
Steve Robertson on the Farm Bureau Insurance Guest Line. He's keeping you up to date on genespage.com. But at the end of the day, do you get the sense Marshawn really would like to go pro and start that pro career?
Well, I do, but I think it's also a situation, too, where, I've got it on pretty good authority. He turned down some deals on day 2, so I think he had a number in mind. I don't think that he's the guy, too, that's going to go sign for $150,000 when he could come back, play another year, potentially have a chance to get to Omaha, and then maybe erase some concerns about his own game in the eyes of some, and then maybe sign next year on day 2 and make, $500,000, $600,000-$700,000. I mean,
right.
You come back and more your college baseball and you turn that signing bonus into 5 times what it is today. That's a good investment if you ask me.
Okay. So you feel like that the Mississippi State fan base will know, you'll know, Lemonis will know, maybe somewhere in the Monday range?
Yeah, I think maybe first part of next week. And you never know for sure because, here's what has to happen too, Bo, and I don't think a lot of people understand this. Now, if Dave Marshawn was willing to just go ahead and sign for $150,000, then he would, okay? And all picks 11 through 20, you can go up to $150,000. Anything above the 150 comes out of your bonus pool. You're not penalized if you just sign them for 150. So it's clear to me, based on what I've learned the last 24 hours, Marshawn's not willing, at this point, to sign for $150,000. So before they get to him at pick number 18, they got to settle those deals or be pretty close to settling all those deals ahead of him because they can't promise him money that they can't afford to pay, right? And then it comes out of the luxury tax and all that sort of stuff. And so there's just a process you have to work through. They've got 17 other guys that were drafted ahead of him. Some of those guys may be willing to draft or sign for peanuts. And so that would free up some money for him. But the reality of it is this is a process. It's going to take several days to navigate. And I don't think Marshawn is just going to sign for the bare minimum. I think they're going to have to pay him for him to forego his junior season at Mississippi State. And can they pay him enough for him to do that? That's the real question.
All right, where do you have it, 50-50 or better or worse?
Looking at the economics on this, I think it's better than 50-50 that he returns. I mean, again, I'm not ready to call it because you never know until he gets the deal. You don't really have enough information to make a decision, he nor any of us. But just looking at the economics of this and the fact that there's so much bonus money that's going to have to be spent to satisfy those 17 guys ahead of him. I guess it's actually technically 18 because they had a comp pick in the second round. I think it's going to be a situation where he's not going to get a significant amount of money. But again, if he's just ready to begin his pro career, I don't think the money matters. But if the money didn't matter, he'd go ahead and agree to $150,000 now. So there's just not enough information right now for anybody to make an informed decision. But if you put a gun to my head and said, what do you think? I think he's back.
Okay. Hunter Hines is back. I mean, that's a big get for Lemonis and the squad. When you look at how he can change the game with the swing of the bat, did you feel like that was going to happen? Absolutely not.
I really thought he would get drafted early on day 3. My original projections were late on day 2. And then when he didn't, because here's what happens, Bo, is like in the middle of all of this, everybody's looking at their draft board and they're pulling and grabbing and everything else. And then all of a sudden, okay, we're done for the day. Let's go home and reconvene and see who's available. I really thought in round 11 or 12, somebody would say, hey, Hunter Hines is available, right? So, my goodness, let's put a deal together. And that didn't happen. And I was also told Monday night that he was not going to sign for peanuts, that Yeah, the Mississippi State home run record is within reach, and Hunter's a different cat too, man. Hunter's not, he's a hunter, a fisher, country music guy, drives a pickup truck, and he's not a guy that's just going to throw all this away for an insignificant amount of money. Now, of course, his dream is to play pro ball, and I have no doubt in my mind that if he'd been drafted in the first 10 rounds, we'd be having a different conversation today. But there is not a player in the portal better than Hunter Hines. You can't go out and replace that. And if you had been told before the draft started that you would get through day one and think, oh, Dakota Jordan might be back, and then that gets reconciled, right? And the Giants put together a great deal. Really kind of respect how that all kind of came together for them. I'm happy for DJ. And then just as you're beginning to kind of get over that, kind of self-manufactured disappointment, you find out Hunter Hines is going to come back. I mean, when you think about what they've already added in the portal, and then you get one of the most prolific home run hitters in the last few years in the Southeastern Conference back in your lineup, and you weren't expected to do so, you talk about a gift. It's incredible. And if you get the Hunter Hines that you had maybe in 2023, you get that guy back, you can afford to get really excited about college baseball.
Right. And Ross Highfield coming back, that's a big deal. I mean, you're filling some holes, not counting who you got coming in. What high school guy didn't get drafted early that you thought may, and he'll be coming to campus for Mississippi State and Lamonas?
Well, Charlie Foster, and had a chance to interview him yesterday, and he turned down several deals. And this is a guy, left-handed, upper to mid-90s on the fastball, a three-pitch mix, got great spin rate on the breaker. This is a guy that got invited to the Major League Baseball Combine. In fact, State had 5 signees, commitments and/or signees. They got invited to the MLB Combine. 3 of those 5 are coming to campus. And that's really, what you want, right? You want to go out and recruit those kids that are going to have draft potential early, and then you want them to come to school. I mean, Vanderbilt kind of built a program on that. Of course, they did it a lot differently than everybody else did. But you don't want kids that the pros don't want. That's how you win national championships, is you go out there and you get those guys like Charlie Foster that that was invited to the Combine. There were, 257 players invited to the Combine? He's one of them, and now he's headed to campus. That's a great late get for Mississippi State, and the fact that you navigate through the draft, and now he's coming to school and won't be draft eligible for about 3 years. That's significant right there to get Charlie Foster in. And then Kevin Manel's a junior college guy. It's like nobody ever.
What's his last name, Steve?
Manel. Kevin Manel.
Okay. Kevin
Manel plays at Cloud City Community College. Okay, and he's not your typical JUCO guy. This guy signed with Kansas State out of high school. He contributed as a freshman. Things didn't work out there. He goes to junior college. This is a guy that I had one Major League Baseball scout tell me was the best junior college pitcher in the draft pool. They just didn't know if they're going to be able to offer him enough, right? Because Kevin Manel's got good representation, and that guy also understands if he goes to Mississippi State and kind of replicates what he's done at his 2 previous stops, he's a guy that's probably going to move in, to the top 5-6 rounds in next year's draft. And so he's got representation that sees the big picture. And, Bo, that is so incredibly important. Like, because you think about this deal with Dakota Jordan. If he is not repped by Scott Boras, I mean, if he's repped by Scott Boone, from Wiggins, Mississippi, Dakota gets a terrible deal. But instead, Scott Boras is DJ's agent. And what do you know? The Giants have a first-round pick where they take a senior. So you know what? They can afford to pay a little bit under slot. They don't have a second or third round guy. So those are big-time bonuses they don't have to pay. Their second pick in the draft is the 4th round. It goes to Dakota Jordan. And then 3 of the 6 picks after him ended up being college seniors where they can afford to just pay those guys peanuts. They call them senior savers for a reason. And so Dakota Jordan is going to get second-round money in the 4th round, and that's because you've got good representation.
What does that look like? What?
Oh, we're talking $2 million plus. Yeah. I mean,
wow.
Dakota's going to get paid well. And but you look at this Kevin Manel situation. I don't know who his rep is, but it's clear that this guy has a good head on his shoulders because he sees the bigger picture. Because if you're a guy who's just starting out, you need as many guys to sign as you can because you're trying to build a business. But when you don't need Dakota Jordan to sign a contract so you can take a vacation, you can be very patient with your client, right? And that's kind of how the situation is with Manel. They could have taken deals on both Monday and Tuesday, but they elect not to because they see the bigger picture. And not only is that great for college baseball, it's great for the young man. It's great for them. Provided they stay healthy and work hard, they should play themselves into a much better situation as a draft prospect the following year. And so getting Manel to camp, nobody even talks about that guy. That guy is a legit dude, man. And
where does he fit? Where could he fit, you think? Manel, this JUCO guy that's the number one pitcher possibly in JUCO.
I mean, could he factor in on Sunday as a starter, or is he, long relief guy on Friday or Saturday? He's definitely a weekend guy. It's just a matter of him so on that role. But yeah, he's a real dude, and the stuff is real. And so when you start thinking about Mississippi State signing class had 20 members in it, 20. And then 5 of those 20 go to the MLB Combine. Another half dozen got calls on Tuesday, and 2 more got calls on Wednesday. So the majority of this class was in the Major League Draft talent pool. And now 18 of those 20 are coming to campus. Then you factor in the fact that you've got 8 portal commitments, one of which got drafted, and he's kind of like Marshawn, still kind of waiting to see what the deal looks like.
Travis Smith?
Yeah. But you start thinking about that for a second. You talk about flipping a roster, and that was the big concern when we all got in the car and got ready to head home from Charlottesville, Virginia. Man, what does this roster look like next year? I mean, you're losing so much in the lineup. I think now you look at it, it's like, hey, you've addressed a lot of your pitching concerns with the portal and your recruiting class, and now all of a sudden you've used the portal to kind of rebuild your order. And then you've got Hunter Hines coming back. Ross Highfield's closer to 100%, and they'll be super careful with Ross in the fall. Super careful for him, and then he'll be good to go. I'm a Highfield fan, have been from the beginning. I think this lineup, now it's just about kind of melding this group together and kind of defining some roles. But, all of a sudden I think you go from, man, what does this order look like, to thinking, man, I can't wait to see these guys swing come fall.
Steve Robertson on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Okay, so Charlie Foster is one of the big gets. Where do you think he could factor in as a true freshman? Because that's difficult.
I tell you what would be great for Mississippi State is if Charlie Foster could just be your Tuesday guy, right? If Charlie could just be your Tuesday guy all year long, and then you get him college experience and then kind of prep him to be a rotation guy next year, that would be phenomenal. And how many times this year did you wonder about who was going to pitch in a midweek game, and State made those things so interesting. You had to use sometimes your weekend arms to close those things out. You need some of these newcomers to just take ownership with the midweeks. Like, Coach, you guys worry about the weekend. We'll take care of this stuff in the midweek. And then Charlie Foster's good enough to do that. I mean, that's a guy. Now, he won't be the only one because, you got some weeks you play a Tuesday and a Wednesday midweek game. But I think Foster, when you look at the path of his development, I think he's a guy that probably needs to be a midweek starter this year, and I think he's good enough to hold that down. And then you get into next year where you say, hey, we got a couple guys that are moving on, a couple guys that are going to be drafted, but we've already groomed this guy. And that way you're not so reliant on the portal, and you're always going to be in the portal looking to improve your talent level. But the core group, and Dave Van Horn said this to me when I interviewed him for the preview of the Mississippi State series, the nucleus of your team has to be your high school guys that you recruit and develop. The portal's got to be to supplement where you're deficient. And so Charlie Foster, I think, is kind of that poster boy for that. The guy who was highly recruited, signed with Georgia, asked out of his letter of intent, had 14 offers in about 48 hours, took a half dozen visits, chose Mississippi State because he wanted to play for Justin Parker, and told me just yesterday Justin Parker is the best pitching coach in the country. And the fact that Mississippi State set a school record for number of pitchers selected this year after just 1 year. And let's be honest about this, Bo. All these guys that Justin Parker got were scratch and dent. I mean, let's just kind of call it for what it is. And I think, again, it just magnifies the job that he did. I mean, Durangelo obviously was a guy that you knew would get drafted, right? He becomes a first rounder under Justin Parker's supervision. Cal Stephen was a guy probably a back end of the draft guy. Comes to Mississippi State, he's an All-American taken in the second round. And so that's the thing Foster talked about. It's like, hey, when I look at what he's done with these guys, I begin to get excited about what he can do with me. You almost wish the draft would have happened earlier in the portal recruiting process, so then Lamonis and Parker could say, hey, listen, hey, we just put 8 guys in the draft, and you know, 3 of those guys were on the trash heap for college baseball, and a couple other guys were just transfers who are coming here trying to reset their career. We've got them all in pro ball now. That's a statement that I don't think anybody else in the country can make.
Okay, I've got a minute or so. Travis Smith, pitcher from Kentucky, who went to the portal and Mississippi State landed but got drafted. Handicap that one for me.
I'm a little more worried about that one, to be quite honest with you. Number one, he got drafted earlier. And, you know, typically the way this thing works, you know, is they throw a number at him and just say, hey, are you at least interested in this? And because of the fact that he is so much higher in their pecking order, as 15 and 18, you say, is there not big a difference? Well, you got to get to that deal before you get to 18, right? And, you know, he's a guy, too, that's been kind of up and down in Kentucky. He's got great talent, but I think that he may be a guy that says, you know what, I can't afford to risk it. You know, what if I go to Mississippi State and, you know, I miss a month again with some tightness or from information, and then I drop in out of the draft and had to sign an undrafted free agent deal. And so he may see this as his best opportunity. And, again, doesn't have his deal yet, but I'm a little more concerned about that one than I am Marshawn, because I think Marshawn has more upside to come back. I think Marshawn's a guy to come back, play his way in the top 10, and probably get $500,000 or more dollars. Travis Smith has the potential to kind of have a Cal Steven type career, but he's a little deeper into this thing. He only has 1 year of leverage to work with, where Marshawn has 2. And so I'm a little more concerned about Travis Smith. Again, haven't heard anything one way or another, but I'm a little more concerned about him.
Steve Robertson, genespage.com. He'll keep you updated throughout the weekend on Marshawn and Travis Smith. Steve, thanks, man. Appreciate it. The Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone, is brought to you by the Muffaletta, the Gumbo, and the 41 beers on tap at the Keg House in Ridgeland on Highway 51, right by Fleet Feet. And, yes, they have Key City beer.